because I got to record this. I have to make sure I record this.
That would be useful.
Recording in progress.
I had to do, during COVID, I was teaching these bar classes for my friend in Wisconsin. And she was like, make sure you record the class like at the beginning. And I taught this class and I forgot to record it.
And you slayed it. It was like,
and it was, I was like dripping sweat. I was like, yes. And afterwards I finished and I looked at it and I go, oh my God, I didn't record that class at all. And I got off and she was so mad at me. I was like, I'll do it again. I was like, I'll do it right now and record it. And you can send this recording. She goes, there were all these people that couldn't make it. I had like 10 people that want to take your class. And I promised them. And I'm like, oh my God. So I had to do it again.
Oof.
By myself. It was brutal because I had to do everything. Because when you're doing those types of classes, you have to do everything. Hello, and welcome to this season of Alter Eagle. I am your host, Laura Krigo. Let's keep the conversation going. Now a word from our sponsor, BetterHelp. For a long time, I suffered with depression and anxiety. I had tried therapy before, but struggled finding a therapist I connected with until I found BetterHelp. That's why I am so excited to share BetterHelp's mission to make therapy more affordable and more accessible. Because finding a therapist can be hard, especially when you're limited to the options in your area. BetterHelp is a platform that makes finding a therapist easier because it's online. Remote therapy sessions, and by filling out a few questions, BetterHelp can match you to a professional therapist in as little as a few days. It's easy to sign up and get matched with a therapist. Click the link in description and receive 10% off your first month of BetterHelp. And by clicking that link, you support this channel. Plus, you can easily switch to a new therapist at no additional cost without stressing about insurance, who's in your network, or anything like that. I was struggling for a long time, and BetterHelp was where I found my therapist, Whitney, who I still see weekly for almost 2 years now. So, if you're struggling like I was, consider online therapy with BetterHelp. Click the link in description or go to betterhelp.com/altereagle. That's betterhelp.com/altereagle. There's no better time than now to start your mental health journey. Thank you again, BetterHelp, for supporting this channel. This episode is brought to you by R.W. McDonald & Sons Incorporated, Robert Stevens Jewelers. Thank you to our sponsors for your support on our first season of the Alter Eagle podcast. Anyways, how are you?
I'm good. It's Friday. It's always a good thing.
So what are you doing this weekend I don't know. What are you doing this weekend? Anything fun?
No, I have to go to campus tomorrow because we do info sessions once a month for incoming people who are interested in joining the executive MBA program. And so I show up as the academic director and say a few words, and then I'm going to sit in on another class that is meeting tomorrow. So that's my weekend.
Yeah. So you're always busy.
Super exciting.
Well, that's what happens when you're wicked smart. So
yeah, well, something like that, or play it on TV.
Well, I don't know. I'm pretty sure that you are. I'm pretty sure I remember there was a night when I lived in LA, and I don't remember if there was a bunch of us getting together or something. You're like, I'm so sorry, friend, I'm not going to make it. I have to write a speech. And it was like for an award ceremony or something. It was like for the Emmys or something. I'm like,
I don't think it wasn't for the Emmys.
I was like, oh, casual. Well, I think in my brain, I was like, oh my gosh, he's like, but, tell us a little bit about, I could read your bio. Obviously, your bucket list was to be a full-time professor, and you are now a full-time professor at the USC Marshall School of Business, correct?
That's correct. So,
talk about that a little bit, and I don't know, attaining that goal, that's amazing, because I think a lot of people, there's a statistic that says, I think for you that was also a dream, right? It was a big dream of yours to do that, to be a full-time professor. And
it was, although I thought it was a recent dream until a friend of mine who, when I was in my 20s, I worked for her, and she's kind of a mentor. And after I won an award about a year ago, she said, you always said you wanted to teach. which I don't remember. I don't even remember that from my 20s, but apparently I've been saying it for a long, long time.
Okay. So it was, we're going to go with dream, and that only like 5 to 7% of the human population actually attains their dreams, because most people are set back by other people's opinions or thoughts or disappointing other people. You know, a lot of times we put so much out, and then when it doesn't work out, that's why a lot of people don't try again. So I don't know. I think you are I can say baddie on here. I'm not allowed to say anything more than that. So,
fair.
But that's what you are. And also, I saw you ride a SoulCycle bike, so you're a real baddie there too. Which you talked about riding this instructor bike
back then. Yes.
But you were always like full on going for it. Like you were going for it. I remember we were always like, oh, we love Larry. He's so great when you're in class. So, but yeah, I don't know. I'm really honored that we're doing this. I mean, this was a really quick conversation, but because it's September and, you know, our connection obviously through fitness, but then also our connection through Alex's Lemonade Stand Foundation and your daughter, Jordan. So what was this? 2016, after my bike ride, we did the storytelling night at Movember, and you had told me about it. Was it a TED Talk that you did?
No, it was a talk that I developed for a different charity, actually. It was a charity that paired photographers with childhood cancer patients. And my daughter Jordan was part of the first class where they went through like a 6 or 8 week program, and they had a mentor and they had assignments and they were given a camera. And through that process, they asked me to come and speak about it. And that's where I sort of developed that material that I shared that night, and I've shared it a couple times, other times, usually in the context of just creativity and how creativity doesn't always come from somebody sitting down and saying, okay, I'm going to do something creative. It is sometimes, you know, thrust upon you. Yeah.
I don't know why I had that in my head that it was a TED Talk, but to me, it was very much, I mean, it was very much in that wheelhouse of having, you know, this powerful story, and, you know, just talk a little bit about whatever you're comfortable with sharing about Jordan's journey. And that moment in particular, I remember the part that I remember from that was that it was the first time that you and Nettie saw Jordan actually look defeated. It was the first time you were leaving. I don't remember if it was a doctor's appointment or one of her first radiation appointments, but because she had to have radiation in parts of her body where she had the marks, so they made sure that they were hitting the same spots every time, she was worried about what the kids at school would say. And that was where this whole idea kind of came up. I just remember you telling that part of the story.
Yeah. So Jordan was diagnosed. She was symptomatic, but not diagnosed with brain tumors when she was about 5 years old. She's had bad headaches, and the doctors did something did a procedure to solve that problem. But at the time when they did biopsies, there was no indication that there was anything else going on. So she spent about a year. We were just trying to figure out, why did she have the headaches, even though she wasn't having the headaches anymore because she had the shunt put in. And then around 2004 is when she was starting to have new symptoms, cognitive symptoms, where, you know, she was always a really bright child, did really well in school. And her kindergarten teacher had noticed that, you know, she wasn't able to do certain things. She wasn't able to read as much as she was reading before. She was having a problem identifying things like shapes. And, you know, our first instinct as parents was like, oh, what's with this kindergarten teacher? So we were kind of mad. And then we went in to see her neurologist, and they did an MRI. And that's when she was diagnosed. We realized that there was a massive amount of disease in her brain and spine. So that started her journey right around age 6. And it was an interesting journey for us because it started not like a lot of other patients. She didn't immediately have surgeries. She didn't immediately have like really invasive chemotherapy. In fact, the first chemotherapy protocol she was on was a pill that she took every night. It didn't make her sick. It didn't make her hair fall out. So in a way, we got very complacent and thinking, okay, everything must be fine. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't until about a year later that we started seeing different symptoms like seizures and further decline. If she was within 30 days, she was in a wheelchair as a result of just a really bad reaction to a fairly common chemotherapy drug called vincristine. And her oncologist said it's the worst reaction he's ever seen to the drug in his career. So she just kept having, things. You've met her. She's a baller. Like these things don't, she always looks forward. She's never looking back. So we went through this. She started intravenous chemotherapy. That did make her sick. She did have some hard times with that. But as you said, she never really cared about, she never was insecure at school. In fact, right after she had the first procedure, she had these big scars on her back of her head as a child. She wanted to show the other kids the scars, and some of them didn't know what to think of it, but she wasn't, ashamed of them at all. Mm-hmm. But the time you're talking about, we have to sort of fast forward to about, I don't know, I guess it was about 5 years later. And she had a new tumor that was growing that could be removed. And it was in a very bad place. It was on a part of her spine where there was a 50-50 chance that the surgery could result in paralysis. So we went and got second opinions and talked, even though we loved her medical team, they were amazing. And they decided, before we do that, we should try radiation. And she had never had radiation before. A lot of times with children, especially when you're dealing with brain tumors, they'll hold back on radiation unless it's absolutely necessary because it can have long-lasting effects on a child's intellectual development. So we decided it was time to try that. And that's where this instance happened, where we talked to her about it. We told her we were going to do this. We thought she should do this before we do surgery. She agreed. The doctors explained to her that they were going to do a prep session and they get her, basically do all the measurements and get her aligned. And then they take out a Sharpie and they write on her face all the alignment points. And when they did that, she thought it was super funny. It was like, you're writing on my face. But then when she realized, I don't get to go home and wash it off, that's when she had that moment of, I'm nervous about what the kids at school will say. So we had this, when I do the talk, what I talk about is how photography helped us in our journey. The most obvious way is we used it as a way to memorialize what happened in the journey. So we have all these really wonderful photos of different moments in time that she still looks back on those and reflects. But the second way that photography played a role for us was when she was having this issue. I was doing a lot of photo shoots with like models and things like that. I was practicing. I'm an amateur, but I was just practicing things because I was launching a new branding practice. And I said, hey, why don't we do this? Why don't we, instead of looking at them like there's something to be afraid of, why don't we treat it like a photo shoot? And it's like war paint because you're getting ready to go back to war with cancer. And she liked that idea. So I put out the call. We found a professional makeup artist. We found a professional hairstylist. We rented a studio in Hollywood and we did this war paint sessions where we took those marks and we made them even more exaggerated. Yeah. And so that was like the second part for us that was where photography became a form of therapy for both of us to work through something that was, by that point, you kind of just become numb to the pain, but it was a chronic pain in life. And it was very therapeutic for her. She's very proud of those photos even to this day. Oh yeah. They're beautiful. And hopefully I can share them, at least one of them here, because there's one in particular that sticks out in my brain. I feel like it was a profile photo or something. I feel like her hair was, I just remember you talking about that, and you used the reference of, the women in the tribes in Africa and the warriors and how they put the war paint on. And I love that reference. And I especially love the fact that you knew that this is what needed to happen. And as you guys were like leaving this appointment or something, you said something to Nettie and she's like, what? Like, why would we want to take her picture? You're like, no. You're like, yep. And then talking about that project and how you had been, photographing models and you just had this vision in your brain. And I remember meeting Jordan for the first time, and every time I've ever met her, she's never down. Like even the time that Rachel and I came and visited her, I believe that was her 20th birthday, or was it her? It was her 20th birthday at UCLA. I remember coming into the hospital, we brought the balloons and the cake and everything for her. And I just kept thinking in my head as we were, planning this, that I was like, there's so many times where we take life for granted. And here's this young woman who's 20 years old, and how many 20-year-olds are out there who, are taking life for granted and
ungrateful for the things that they have. And there's this 20-year-old girl, and just us coming in and seeing her, and even having you and Nettie there just to support her. And she always had support, right? And us showing up was like the greatest day for her. And she was in the hospital. I mean, it just, I don't know. It's like a day that I'll never forget. Like there was never a question as to whether that's what we were doing. You know, we were like, this is what we're doing. It's her birthday. We have to go. Like, let's take her a cake. Let's make this a memory, you know, like change the memory around. Right. So, and I think that that's something that you learn from meeting people like yourself. Like I pick stuff like that up from having met people like you and being friends with people who do go above and beyond, and they show up. And it's not something that a lot of people, I think, recognize. I mean, even to this day, I'll just do something and someone's like, oh, that's not necessary. You don't have to do that. And I'm like, it's not that I felt like I had to do it. It's that I wanted to do it. Sometimes just showing up for someone and just being like, here you go, is kind of all they need. You know, at what age, was it pretty young whenever she first started going through this journey that you guys that you in particular got involved with Alex's Lemonade Stand Foundation? Like remind me when that all started happening.
Yeah. So first of all, that day she remembers that day, by the way, also, and talks about it. And you upstaged me because
sorry.
when we found out that she was going to be in the hospital for her birthday, and she spent 3 birthdays in the hospital. So this third one for the 20th birthday was a real bummer for her. She wasn't in any pain, and it was really weird. Her sodium was out of balance. So it was almost like she didn't understand why she even needed to be in the hospital. But I ordered a cake from Christina Tosi's bakery at the time. They didn't have them here in LA. What is it? Momofuku Milk Bar in New York.
Yeah, Milk Bar, yeah.
So it was like, $200 to get this super chocolate cake that we flew out from New York. And you brought, we still don't know where you got that cake, but she's like, we had them side by side, and all of us said, oh my God, the cake that Laura brought is so much better. No offense to Christina Tosi. I'm obsessed with her, but whatever that cake was, she still talks about that to this day. But that community has been very, people like you have made the journey great for us along the way. So Alex's Lemonade Stand, she got involved with that. We as a family got involved with that. I want to say she was around, I don't know, 11 or so. Okay. Or maybe it was around 2011. Somehow that's what stuck in my brain. And we found it, we were trying, we, as a lot of parents do, once you're dealing with this, you want to find others who have been through the similar journey, or just do your homework. And we were looking at places to give money to also, because now we were really invested in this cause, and we wanted to, if we're going to give money to charity, we wanted to give it to charities that were working towards solving and finding cures for childhood cancers. And I just did a web search. I found their website, and they had at the time a program, I think we still have one, where your children can volunteer to be hero ambassadors. And so Jordan volunteered. And what that meant was every once in a while we get a call. They're based in Philadelphia. We get a call from the folks in Philadelphia, and they'd say, we have an event that's 30 miles from you. Would you mind? They're doing a fundraising, a lemonade stand and an event. Could you guys show up and just say hello? And if you want to say a few words about your journey, please do. And the thing that I love about the organization, they're so humble. It's never like go out and talk about us. It's go out and be there and say hello and thank people and tell them your story if you feel comfortable telling your story. And so we did that a few times, and I got to know the founders, Liz and Jay Scott, who have become very, very good friends. And the first time we really were involved in a bigger scale was they do an event here in Los Angeles called LA Loves Alex's, which has become the food event to attend every year. We did not know this at the time. Oh,
I remember you invited me to that, and that was...
Yes. It's amazing. Every year we sell out. But the first year they invited us, I didn't know anything about it. I had no idea how big it was. And they said, oh, could you deliver some remarks? Would you and Jordan feel comfortable doing that? And they wanted Jordan to speak. Usually they'll bring a childhood cancer survivor, a hero, to come and speak. But she has a lot of cognitive abilities. She's not able to read, so she can't really prepare remarks. So I said, we'll go up on stage together. I can work with her and I can speak for her, and then we can let her say a few words. I thought it'd be, I was thinking it was like a couple dozen people. And then we show up at the Sony lot, which was where they used to have the event. We're on the back lot, and there's all these hundreds of people. And we, the first people they do is they invite us to meet the host, which was Neil Patrick Harris.
Casual.
Jordan is like, just like blown away by, she knows him from How I Met Your Mother. And then Jimmy Kimmel is the MC. So Jimmy Kimmel introduces me, and I'm like, what has happened?
You're like, where am I?
That was our introduction. We thought it was going to be this little event, and it was this big event. But we got involved from there, and I sit on the board now, and it's a tremendous organization. All of the money it raises is directly going to cures and to programs that support families who are dealing with childhood cancer. A lot of times we have a great program called Super Sibs, which puts emphasis on the siblings that are often affected. We have travel funds to help parents that need assistance to get the care that they need to go to to get to the specific oncologist or care teams that will help them. And more importantly, we're funding huge grants, and we're already seeing tremendous progress. If you don't know the story, I encourage everyone to check it out. Alex Scott was born shortly after she was born. She was dealing with cancer for her entire life, and midway through her journey, she decided that she wanted to start a lemonade stand. And the reason for doing that is that she appreciated the care she had received, and she wanted to raise money so that the doctors could continue to do works to help other kids and to find cures. And before she passed away, she had raised $1 million, and that was the beginning of the organization. Today, we've since the organization was founded, we've raised over $300 million and funded hundreds of grants. We have a program called Crazy Eights, where we give these really big grants to researchers who have really innovative ideas. And the bittersweet, recently we had a bittersweet milestone, which was the tumor that Alex suffered from. Today, as a result of Alex's Lemonade Stand Foundation, there is a treatment for that tumor, which she probably would have survived. So wow. That's the kind of impact that the organization, one girl's dream, which she was very passionate about, is really coming to life. And so we're very proud to be associated with it.
Yeah. We have one of our reporters here, Paula Grubbs, did a story, on Alex's Lemonade Stand Foundation. And I've started to see a little bit more here. Kids will have a lemonade stand. And I said, I think it's so important for other kids, to be able to understand like the power behind that and just what it means to be able to help other children who can't help themselves. And I love that part of Alex's story, because I remember for her, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but the basis of that really was that her parents were able to make sure that she got the treatments that she needed and get her to doctors. And she recognized that there were other kids in the hospital that maybe weren't able to get that because their parents couldn't afford it. And it came down to that, right? And unfortunately for a lot of families, that's what it is. And they still to this day, I think more people are hearing about the foundation, but there's still people out there who don't know like what all it could do to help them. Because I do remember when I lived in Boston, I reached out to you about that girl, Sky. Now, she was like 20. She did pass away. I believe it was in the next 8 months after that. And I just remember someone else in LA had reached out to me and said, hey, you're associated. And I was like, I'm not. I know people who are. I've been to some events. I've, taught some soul cycle classes, and I had been to the event at UCLA. The two big moments at UCLA at that event that I remember, not only was that there were so many people there and it was just such a huge event, but they also did have, it's Jimmy Kimmel, right? Mm-hmm. He did get up and speak, and he always does he's part of the auction where him and his wife auction off that dinner because they have that barn on their property. And I remember when it was coming down to the end of the bidding for that, there was two gentlemen that had their paddles up, and I think they were just under 500,000. And I think what he had said was, wherever they were, it was almost to that. And he said, if you both will agree to do 500,000, we'll do 2 dinners. And I think it was bringing them up to that point. And like in that one bidding, it was $1 million. And I remember we were sitting like at the next tent over, and we're all just like watching, and they looked at each other, and then they both threw their paddles up, and people were just losing their minds. And then as it was starting to kind of dwindle down, Jordan was in her wheelchair that day, I remember. And this song came on, and we were just kind of like doing this, in our seats. And I remember she started unhooking her belt, and she started moving the like taking her feet off the thing. And I was like, oh my gosh, what's happening? And she pushed and stood herself up, and she stood up and just like stood in place and like started wiggling. And there was something, I recorded that. I need to see if I can find that. It was this moment of like, she's just so remarkable to me. And I think that's part of this too, that, people seeing that and seeing how much she fought and how hopeful she stayed. And that's a huge part of it. And I know that's not an easy thing for parents to do, but I'm sure that there were a lot of moments where you felt defeated and sad and worried and, afraid to lose her. But is there anything that you would say to a parent, who's possibly going through this for the first time when it comes to, staying positive in such a hard situation?
It's a hard one because I think it affects parents differently. It affects families differently. I guess, we've met a lot of other families on the way. I don't think I would ever tell someone to stay positive because I think there are moments where you just feel such extreme levels of grief. Even if your child is kicking its butt, you've lost health, and your child is going through this. And so some parents descend, it's a really hard time for them. And I don't think you can just tell them to be positive and cheer up because it's, I don't know, sort of denies that feeling. Yeah. But I do think what I have seen is when you can sort of, to take a page from Alex's, when you can try to figure out how to turn lemons into lemonade as much as possible for the family, for your child, for yourself, there is benefits to finding those moments where you can, see some sort of positive in it. But I feel like we're really privileged that we got to do that. We were very rarely in Jordan's case on a race for time. Her, as her oncologist told us, her cancer was dividing in spite of itself. It was very slow progressing. Some families don't have that benefit. They get the note, they get the diagnosis, and they're immediately going into hardcore radiation, chemotherapy, surgeries. And so you're just trying to process everything. So it's hard, I think, and it's we had at the time that Jordan was diagnosed, she was case number 2, and there was a third patient who was diagnosed very close to when she was, and we got to know that family, and very different journey. He went through, Jordan, in some ways, I feel like it's again, bittersweet. The damage that the brain tumors did and the chemotherapy did, in some ways, took away some things that she wishes she could do. She wishes that she could do she wishes she could go to college, right? It's not really in the cards for her.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, she never had to deal with severe depression. She's never been that way. She's always found a way to like live her best life. It's kind of like a little anti-Mame. So that's very fortunate. The other patient, it wasn't the case. Like he had other issues too, but the very serious depression, which was hard on him and hard on his family. Mm-hmm. So we were pretty blessed in that sense that that Jordan just sort of fell into the I'm going to have fun camp and kept it there as much as she possibly could.
Yeah. And I didn't mean to be, I guess when I said that, I wasn't thinking that, I didn't mean to come across me like, buck up and be positive. Oh, no, I'm definitely the type of person that's like, you've got to lean into the feelings. You've got to go through the feelings. It definitely is one of those situations where for the time period that I knew, or I shouldn't say know you, have known you. Oh my goodness, words sometimes. And then of course I'm sitting with like the man with all the words. Even when you were explaining your new company, Conclusive, right?
Yes.
But the way that you said it in the voice memo, I was like, he's so smart. He just says things so like, I can't even explain how you said it because I'm like, wow, he's wicked smart. So I don't know. I just appreciate how you put words together. And so I just find I think it's hard sometimes when you see these stories of what families and children are going through. And to me, there's always that. I'm sitting here like looking from the outside and I'm just like, how? Like, how? I mean, if I think that I have a bad day or a bad week, or maybe I'm having a bad year because certain things are not working out for me or went a way that I did not expect them to go, then I think I still have to be grateful for the fact that I have my health and that I have these amazing people in my life who are the prime example of what it means to like live life to the fullest, and you still got to get up and go even though it's like really hard. I think that it's one of those situations where we definitely are meant to be in each other's lives because of the experiences I've had. And the other one that I was thinking out in particular was the moment that you guys did the first charity ride at SoulCycle. And you had talked about how, Jordan came into the room and it was a short little quick thing. And I know Molly had taught that one in Santa Monica, you said, and, you rolled Jordan in her wheelchair and she said something to the class or the people that were there. And then as you guys were leaving the studio, she was in the back seat, and you guys are driving and she's like, I think I'm going to ride next year. And you're both just like, how do we tell her? Like, you didn't tell her no, but in your brain, you're thinking like, oh gosh, like that might not happen. Like, we know that she's going to be very headstrong to get there. So it wasn't, I don't know if it was that next year or if it was the year after that we did the one that we did at Culver City, where you like filled the room and she did get on a bike. And she has that cloth belt that she wears and her trainer was there because I remember her trainer sat in the bike behind her. And then Nettie was, I think, on the bike next to her. And you were obviously front
Nettie
center.
Actually rode behind her.
And then the trainer was next to her.
Christy rode to the right of her.
Okay,
okay. Keeping an eye on her,
Because I remember she was right by the door. Yeah, and we had the fan on her and...
Yeah. We had all these precautions because we were, the fear was what happens if she has a seizure while we're in this room and how do we get her out? So fortunately that never happened. But that was why we're all on edge. Yeah, there was, that experience was so incredibly magical. I text you every once in a while. I'm like, I'm bugging Laura because I'll have a memory of that day. And it's sort of surreal. I mean, without doing a promotion for the brand, it was one of those things where, I hadn't exercised forever. And I decided that like my health was declining and I wanted to be around to see Jordan, after everything we'd done to keep her alive, I'd like to actually be able to see her grow old. So I started exercising and she was really curious about like, where are you going? And I said, I'm going to this place called SoulCycle. And she was like, well, could I go? And at the time, she really had very, very limited mobility. She'd had several surgeries on her legs and they just hadn't worked and they were atrophying. And so I'm like, no, I don't think that's going to work. And she has a seizure disorder and, being in a hot, sweaty room, it just seemed like it wasn't a thing. But she would not let go. So I said, listen, they only teach classes in the morning and in the evenings. There's a whole bunch of time during the day where there's no classes. Maybe I can write to them and see if we can stop by when there's no classes and you can see what this thing is. I maybe they'll let me show you the bike. I don't know. No promise. The thing about Jordan is we would call her the closer, that she is like, she would have been great in sales. She will be like, if you say to her, we could get together and go see a movie. She's like, great. What day? Right. So Saturday. Okay. So around 2:00, like she is closing. So she was like, did you call them yet? So I said, I sent them an email. Their headquarters is in New York. We're not going to hear from them until the week because this is on a weekend. And the next day I got an email that said, hey, not only can you stop by, but we want to do a mini class for you. So, and you can invite your friends and family. So that was with Molly. Molly did that little 15-minute kind of little ride and Jordan loved it and thought it was amazing. She was on the bike for that. And then we decided to do a charity and we did a charity that year in Santa Monica and she couldn't ride. That was a 45-minute full ride. So what we decided to do was wheel her in the wheelchair to say some words to everybody to encourage them. And then she sat in the lobby with her mom while the rest of us were inside having fun. And we got in the car and she was like, next year I'm going to ride. And we were like, that's not going to work. Like, let's not get our hopes up. But there had been another doctor on the scene who was suggesting doing surgery on her legs again. And she said, I want to have that surgery. And her mom and I said, the surgery she had before was incredibly painful. She had basically this will tell you something, everything you need to know about Jordan. The surgeon said, we typically would operate on the one leg, let it recover, then operate on the second leg. And Jordan said, I want you to do them both at the same time. He's like, I don't think that's a good idea. And she's like, that's how if we're going to do this, that's how I'm going to do it.
Oh, wow.
So the baller had both, legs. There were plates put in, there were moving tendons around there. It was a pretty intensive surgery and she was in a lot of pain, big recovery. And then like 2 years later, we didn't see that much progress. So we were kind of talking her out of it. Like, I don't think you should do another surgery. And she was like, no, I'm going to do that surgery. And part of it was because I want to ride that ride. That wasn't the only reason, but that was a big factor. And it was 1 year later that we did the ride with you. And yeah, she was on a bike and we did it a couple more times after that. And she's never forgotten it. It's a very important memory for her.
It was crazy because I remembered a lot of the people that came we had some people that were riders at SoulCycle. That's what we call them, riders. Because sometimes I'll use that word and people are like, what? I'm like, what? Well, we're riding bikes.
Another instructor. Alba taught 3 classes that day and showed up and rode right next to me, which made my job harder.
Of course, because that's what we do. That's what we do. We're like, oh, you think that's a lot? Like you should have gone through training. And there were a lot of people in the room that were fit, but it would have been like me going to a CrossFit class. I would have had my butt kicked, right? Because even though I was fit, my body wasn't attuned to that type of working out. I mean, I lifted weights, whatever, not to get off on a tangent, but I just remember everybody in that room was just like, and I'm like, I kind of made this like kind of easy, but like not, because I wanted it to be a true class. But a lot of the songs, Jordan had said some songs that she liked. So I was like, let me see what I can fit here and there. And, we did that. And
she requested Toxic, which is not an easy song to write to. I'm sorry. I'm gonna take offense.
The minute she said Toxic, I was like, oh, this is going to be good. Does she know the BPMs of that? And it has to be a side to side, but then it's good for like some pushes in the saddle. But it's like a quick side to side with some like little travels. So it was, that one gets your heart rate up and keeps it. So it's like, now we got to bring it back down. So she, is on her bike and we've got her kind of, I remember she was moving her hips so her legs could kind of start moving, and we had a plan if we had to get her off. I'm like, just unbuckle her shoes, slide her feet out of her shoes. Don't even worry about unclipping the shoes. If we have to get her off in an emergency, just do that. I remember we were like ready. And I saw all these people like dying. And I think it was a push, like against resistance or something. And I remember looking over at her and she's just going to town. She's going for it. And I think I told the class that, like I said something. I said, that girl over there is moving her legs right now. And last year she was in a wheelchair. I just remember a moment of referring to her wheelchair and how she was going for it. And people just started screaming. Remember, they were just like yelling.
It was great.
It was just so great.
I had a lot of my UTA colleagues there too, which was great because they had set up a fundraiser years before that's part of an Alex's Lemonade Stand initiative called Million Mile, which this event always took place during the Million Mile. And we counted everybody's contribution towards our Million Mile goal. So they were all there too. And a lot of them were regular writers. Some of them have always wanted to try it. So it was just like a super great experience. And it was, she talks about it all the time. She wonders when we're going to do it again. I'm like, I don't really do that anymore. But at the time it was fun.
Hey, listen, I mean, if Jordan thinks we can do it, I feel like maybe this is a goal. Maybe next year maybe I need to come out. We need to figure something out. Let's figure something out. I mean, there's a studio here. It's funny that I've been wanting to get back on a bike, and there's a studio here that someone recently had said, you need to teach there. You need to go teach there. It's not far from my house. I'm like, yeah, with all the free time I have right now, I want to, because I do miss that. Even just the music side of it, for me, that was a huge part of it, was that journey with the music and building the playlists. And I love that she knew, and the people. Yeah.
I mean, the room that I used to ride with you in, which was 10 o'clock or whatever on Sundays. I've actually, a lot of those people now ride in the Sunday here in Santa Monica, but just good people. Like you got to know them. It was a great culture.
It was such a good energy too. When you'd walk in, it's like you knew the people that you were going to see, and every once in a while you'd see a new face because someone would bring someone. But just so many amazing moments, especially in Culver City. I mean, I had amazing moments in Brentwood, Santa Monica, and Culver City. Like, those were my 3. Although I did have time in West Hollywood and Manhattan Beach and Newport and even Malibu. I had taught a class there, and Oh, geez, Pasadena. I forgot about Pasadena. Geez, I was all over the place.
Yeah.
If you've never lived in LA and you know what it's like to have to teach a class in Pasadena in the morning and then Brentwood and Santa Monica in the afternoon, and then the next day go to Newport Beach,
I always thought the location scouts clearly do not live in California and do not know Los Angeles.
They'd look at a map.
From Santa Monica to Pasadena in an hour break was insane.
I'm like, they're not going to make it. They're not even going to make it late to class, like walking in when the class starts. Like, they're not going to make it to class.
Right.
They didn't understand. We would tell them, they're like, well, I'm looking at the map. I'm like, no, I need you to fly out here. I need you to get in a car. And I need you to get on the 405 with me past 2 p.m.
Yeah.
Okay. So, no. I do want to talk a little bit more about as far as like what you're doing right now, how Jordan is these days. I mean, we had talked about not too long ago, we did talk about how she had talked about wanting to like have her own place and sort of what that means. You know, and again, how she's a closer, right? She like makes things happen. So, I mean, are you comfortable talking about any of that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think she ponders every once in a while whether sometimes she wants to someday have her own place. That comes up very infrequently, right? She lives with her mom and she's pretty happy, especially lately. You know, she's out of the woods. Her cancer has been stable for, gosh, I want to say since 2015 or 16, somewhere around there. So that all that means is there's no way to know. The way the oncologists describe it to us, it's an unfocalized tumor that covers her spine and brain. And he was like, if you took peanut butter and you spread it all over, that's kind of what it's like. So what that means is, you know, you can go in and you can do a biopsy and you could get one part of the peanut butter and they could come back and say, oh, that we don't see any active cancer here. But that doesn't mean some other part covered by peanut butter isn't still alive. So she gets MRIs once a year and she's been stable, meaning that we've seen no progression. So we haven't seen any of the enhancements that you've seen on the MRIs get bigger. They haven't gotten smaller either. There's still clearly something there. We just don't know. Is it dead cancer tissue? Is it just cancer tissue that's not very motivated, thank God, and is just sort of hanging out? We don't know. But the good news is life has gotten more normal. We've gotten, knock wood, the seizure disorder is under pretty much under control. It's kind of alchemy. You're always playing with the drugs to try to minimize the effect on quality of life, but also to keep the seizures at bay. And we seem to have that in a pretty good rhythm right now. Mm-hmm. So, and then she's got these great resources since she graduated from high school, which we got activated. So she now has an aide that comes and visits her 2 or 3 times a week, who's kind of like a friend. But it's good for her because it's someone who says, hey, why don't we go shopping at Williams-Sonoma today? Or why don't we go get Starbucks? And Jordan loves it. And they hang out and they talk about Miley Cyrus. So she's happy. So that's great. And she's the same regional center that we have a great case manager there who's just kept like, they're going to find her a job. That's the thing she really wants to do is to get a job. Plus she said, you know, I want to dance ballet. And we were like, ruh-roh, like I don't know if ballet's in the cards for you.
I think ballet's the heart. I mean, I did all the dances and I'll tell you, ballet's it's hard. It's the most difficult.
Yeah, I did it when I was in my teens and early 20s, I know. But we were wrong again. The case manager came back and said, we have a ballet teacher here that's not far from you who has worked with all kinds of other kids who have disabilities and special needs. And so we have, and I almost started crying.
Wow.
Nettie sent me photos and there's Jordan at the bar doing her stuff.
Stop it.
I know. So she's really good. She's in a good place now. It's like, we're finding all these possibilities and things that she can do. And so that's been making life really good for her.
That's wonderful. I mean, she's a remarkable young woman. I mean, I think that Jordan is one of those people who was meant to teach us, much like yourself, to teach us. I think what she taught me, a lot of what she taught me was, and I don't know if this makes any sense, but when I was around her, I always felt like this sense of like calm, I guess. And almost a need to have patience. And I think that with the cards that she's been dealt to get that from her is such a powerful thing, because I would imagine that having the diagnosis that she's had in her lifetime, and even like she's still, right? She's still constantly, there's this thing, right? Probably in the back of her mind that thinks like, I might have to go through this again or that again or a different battle again. But yet she doesn't live her life as a victim or as a kid who's been dealt cards that it's not fair. You know, there's a lot of that, I think, in the world sometimes where it's like, well, it's just not fair. I don't deserve this. And it's like, well, nobody does. I mean, if we're being totally honest, no one deserves to be 5 or 6 years old and find out that they have cancer, especially like on their brain. So I just think something about her that always really inspired me was how she just was so, I don't know, she just always made me feel like I was like, oh, I gotta calm down. I've gotta like relax. I've got to be patient. It's gonna work out, you know, and just knowing what she wants, like just that in itself, you know, like she did take classes for a while after high school, right? Did she take some postgraduate classes after high school? No,
like
or did
academic, not anything like on learning. She's done things like some crafting things. So obviously done a lot of physical therapy. Did Pilates for a little while, which she liked too. So she's little things, but she hasn't gone back to, you know, she would love to go back to school, but not being able to read is a big inhibitor on that.
Yeah. And that's primarily because of, obviously, right, because of everything that happened with her.
Correct. Yeah,
tumors.
She tries. She never gives up. So she still has all like these reading primers, like you would give to a kindergartner or whatever. And she tries. The problem is it doesn't. I guess what I always thought is she's incapable of learning the sort of alphabet code. So she knows the letters, she knows the sounds they make, but she doesn't really understand how they come together. And so a lot of what she does is she just tries to memorize words, which doesn't really work so well. But it makes her feel like she's reading. But if you try to give her like a long piece of text, she really struggles with it. So we're looking to see if there's the question is it just a different learning approach, or is this really something that, you know, the wiring in her brain is not allowing her to put those pieces together? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing too, though, about her is she's very, I want to say persistent, but also it's like a positive sort of.
No, she's persistent.
Persistent, but there's like another.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Maybe there is a little bit of stubborn in there. Yeah. She has this level of just like, she accepts it for what it is, but she's still like, I'm still going to try. Still going to, you know, and there's just something about that. And that was one of the big reasons, like, I'm not surprised knowing you and Nettie. I'm like not surprised that that's who she is, that that's her process of, you know, getting through everything. You have always been the person, and anytime your name would come up, you know, through any of us instructors, and usually it was like Jenny or Alba or myself, like we were the three that were always like, Larry Vincent. Oh, he's such a wonderful man. So like we love having Larry.
Like I'm annoying them by asking so many questions.
No, not at all. And I remember like the other day, even when you texted me and you said, oh gosh, I got asked to ride the podium. And I was like, yeah, good. Rightfully so. You should be riding the instructor podium. But that can
not helping the brand to see an old sweaty Muppet up there, but it's fun. It is fun.
The Muppet reference is fantastic. You know, Larry, you've had quite the career yourself. I mean, I was just looking at your, you know, as I'm looking at your resume here, well, your bio here, all of your work with UTA, especially, you co-founded the agency's award-winning brand studio. You led teams of researchers, strategists, and designers to create brands, for clients such as, is it Issa Rae? Is that how you say her name?
Issa Rae.
Issa Rae, Seth Rogen, Sofía Vergara, Pratt, Channing Tatum, and Lauren Conrad, among others. You know, he's also worked in marketing and branding for more than 3 decades and have developed strategies for companies like Citrix, Disney, Illumina, MasterCard, Mattel, Microsoft, NFL, Nikon, Qualcomm, and Sony PlayStation. But something I know about you is you are such a humble individual. And I feel as if that's just something that I want to commend you for, because it's very rare in this world, especially in LA. And just want to thank you, I don't know, for being my friend, my crazy self, and for always being supportive, but also just for being such a wonderful example. If there was anything else that you want to say or share, what would that be? I mean, I don't know.
Oh gosh, how do you follow that? Well, thank you for saying that. No, I mean, I said it earlier. I mean, it's always, our friendship is really dear to me. That day, I will never forget. I was writing in your class and we didn't know who was going to teach the class. And you said, I don't know who's going to teach it, but I'm going to show up to ride that thing. And I was like, it's funny she said that because I'm hoping she teaches it.
Yeah.
And it was a perfect pairing with Jordan. She just felt an instant connection to you and you're like another sister. You know, it's like, the having you show up that day when she was in the hospital was like, you know, that was really magical. And you can see in the pictures, so she's bubbling because everything, the balloons, the cake, the absolutely perfect girl gifts. It was like just dialed it for her. That's exactly. And Rachel made it fun too. So it was like, it was a great little surprise for her.
Well, I don't know. Both of us were so just enamored with her story and inspired by how positive she always was. Like every time I was around her, she always wanted to talk to me. Like I just remember that with George. She always wanted to talk. And I just thought like, oh, this is remarkable to me. Here's this young woman who I know a year ago was in a wheelchair, like couldn't. And now she's walking, you know, with assistance. But to me, that's still just something like the standing in itself to someone who's gone through what she's gone through and the showing up and just the positive attitude and wanting to be a part of, the gang. Right. And we both just kept thinking like, I just can't imagine. Like, I think back to when I was 20 years old and I think, I don't know how I would have handled something like that, or if I could have handled something like that happening to me. I mean, when I was 20, I was in college. I wanted to go out. I wanted to be partying. I wanted to be in the scene. And here's this young woman who is literally in a hospital that's near one of the biggest colleges, you know, one of the biggest colleges in the country. There's many of those, but, you know, and there's another one, you know, not far away. You've got USC and UCLA very close to each other. And obviously parties happen in college. And here she is. And for some reason, I feel like it was like a weekend. Was it like a Friday or a Saturday or something? She was
on that stay. It was like a 10-day stay. She was in there for a while.
Yeah.
And we were kind of hoping that she would get out before her birthday came around. But it didn't work out that way. So it probably was over a weekend when you came in. Cause I think it was if I remember right, it wasn't the regular crew that was in there also.
Yeah, because we just thought, I was like, well, I don't have any plans tonight. I was like, let's go see Jordan. And Rachel's like, yes, let's get a cake. And I was like, that's what I was thinking. And we just went ham. And I remember we're like, the balloons have to be purple. I was like, they have to be purple. So, and we bonded on that too.
You had that purple strand of hair that she loved too.
I used to have the purple. Yeah, I did have that royal. It was like a royal purple too.
Oh yeah.
I remember
it was right in her ballpark. She loved it.
I remember one time when I had freshly had it like done. And you know how I used to always have like my hair down in class sometimes? And I just had it done and I was in class and it got really wet and it went across my face and I had these like purple marks. And this woman after class thought that those were veins. She's like, oh wow, look at the veins in your face. And I was like, and I looked in the mirror. I was like, oh no, that's from my purple hair. She's like, oh, I was like, yeah, I think that if I had purple veins in my face, I probably would be a zombie or be dead. I mean,
or you would need medical
probably need attention. Yeah, I don't think that would have been a good thing, but it was really funny. I was like, we're not talking about veins in my arms, you know, like as an athlete. It was just funny. It was a funny moment, but yeah, I remember that she liked my purple hair. So I did too, actually. Now it's gray. So, you know. Oh, well.
It still looks good.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, you're just so remarkable. And I miss you dearly. And I need to get out there. I need to get out there and have I need a solid week to see all my people, to go see the things. And I think I have some California healing to do. You know, I left so quickly and I know we had discussed that as well, but I'm excited to see what's next for you, what's next for Jordan. I mean, I definitely think she's got some pretty big things to do and you know, perhaps maybe we can get a conversation with her one of these days. You know, if she's ready. I know
she would love that.
We had talked about that. So maybe we can see if she's got time for a little convo. Are you guys still doing I know whenever I was there and you were doing your fundraising every September, you did the walk run, and that was out near the tar pits, right?
Yeah, and that was all done by UTA.
Okay.
That was my friend Renee Jones, who's the head of the UTA Foundation. She organized that, and it kind of stopped after COVID for obvious reasons. Mm-hmm. And then I left the company at the end of 2021, so we didn't do that anymore. And Soul doesn't do the charity rides anymore, so we haven't really done that. She asks about it every once in a while, so at some point we'll have to come up with something that we want to do in place of that, but we haven't.
Yeah. Well, maybe next year. We got a year.
Yeah, we do.
We have a year, so.
Every September, Alex's Lemonade is the Million Mile, and that is you don't have to even give money. It's just getting fit and doing physical things to stand in solidarity with children who are fighting cancer.
All right. Well, I'll get my listeners to do that. I mean, I know I have listeners. I have listeners all over the world. I mean, I've got some people in France and Australia and Belgium, so very exciting.
Well, have them go to the website, alexslemonade.org.
Okay.
And you can join a team. You can start your own team. It's not too late. We're only 6 days into September, and it doesn't require any giving, although most people do give because some people will pledge per mile. Some people will just give money, but it's just a great way to show the world that this is something that, you know, children with cancer deal with every day, and we can spend this month walking with them. Yeah.
Okay. I love that. I need to get on that too. So I should just do that and push it for the month, but whatever, because I think part of, you know, when you meet people, right, there's also purpose behind that too. And I think this is part of our friendship purpose, is that I want to make sure I keep supporting that in support of you and Jordan and all of the kids. Because I just think that our voices are really powerful tools. And that's what I'm trying to do with this podcast, is get as much out as I can and let people know that they're not alone. So I just appreciate you so much. I know this was like a last minute thing, but I was like, I have to talk to Larry. It's September. I got to make it happen. So
I'm glad to do it. Thank you.
No, thank you. Well, thank you.
My friend.
Thank you. Happy Friday. And
Happy Friday.
I'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Be well.
You too. Bye. Thank you for tuning in to Alter Ego. Join me every Monday for a new episode. And be sure to click subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. Follow us on Instagram at Alter Ego Podcast. Until next time, stay safe, stay hopeful, stay kind.